guys. I had this crazy idea that I could read to you by the fire because my family had a fire tonight. It's been quite the ordeal trying to get this set up, but let's see how it goes. This is the Aztecs, Life in Tenochtitlan by Matt Doden, illustrated by Samuel Heaty. Sorry you can barely see the fire, but if I mess with this thing, there it is there. If I mess with it too much, it's gonna fall over. Ah, that's pretty good. Okay. The Aztecs, Life in Tenochtitlan by Matt Doden, illustrated by Samuel Heaty. Having a hard time saying the name of that place. Okay, we have the table of contents here. There's an introduction that I'm going to read to you, followed by some other chapters. I'm not going to read them all, but here is the picture. I know it's a little dark, but I think it's still pretty cool and worth it. Okay, so here's where we are. And you can see that world map shows you where we are in part of North America. And on that part of the map there, it says Aztec Empire 1519. Introduction. Many different groups lived in ancient Mexico. One group was the Aztecs. They're known for building great temples and killing people for their gods. The Aztecs also invented a calendar, used cactus fibers to make clothes, and made one of the world's first chocolate drinks. The biggest Aztec city was Tenochtitlan. It was on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. The Aztecs lived in this city from about 1325 to 1521. The capital of modern Mexico, Mexico City, stands where Tenochtitlan once was. Many Aztec ruins lie beneath Mexico City's streets. These traces of the Aztecs tell us a lot about life in their ancient city. Okay, chapter 1, living in Tenochtitlan. I'm going to show you the picture first so you get an idea what we're looking at here, one part at a time. Tenochtitlan was a large city. More than 200,000 people lived there, but life was not the same for all people. The Aztecs were divided into 3 classes or groups. The top group was the nobles. They had the best clothing and houses. Commoners made up the next group. They lived in neighborhoods of about 100 families. Men worked as farmers or traders. Women took care of the house, cooked food, and raised children. Women also made cloth. Slaves were the lowest group. The Aztecs captured many slaves in wars. Most slaves worked for the nobles. The Aztecs called themselves Mexica. Here's another picture for you to see. People of different classes wore different clothing, but the basics were the same for everyone. Men wore a cloth around the waist and a cloak. Women often wore a skirt and a blouse. Some people used clothing to bet on the popular game tay-NOTCH-teet-LAHN. The Aztecs had laws about what people could wear. A person wearing the wrong clothing could be killed. Nobles dressed in brightly colored cotton clothes. They wore necklaces, earrings, and other jewelry. Common people and slaves wore plainer clothing. They made cloth for their clothes from cactus fibers. By law, their clothing could not be brightly colored, and they could not wear gold jewelry. In the game tay-NOTCH-teet-LAHN, 2 teams competed to put a ball through a small ring. Players had to hit the ball with their legs, hips, and elbows. This is the small ring that they're talking about. For Aztecs, the most important food was maize, or corn. The Aztecs ground maize into flour. They used the flour to make tortillas, a type of flatbread. The Aztecs also made a chocolate drink. They poured the liquid from one container to another to make it foamy. Only the nobles could drink it. Here's a picture of them making maize, and the chocolate drink. Other Aztec foods included popcorn, peanuts, fruits, and vegetables. People ate fish and water birds from the lake. The Aztecs may even have raised dogs for food. Most Aztecs ate 2 meals a day, one in the morning and one in the evening. Aztec parents raised their children to be well-behaved. They punished children who did not obey. Parents taught their children the skills they needed to make a living. By the age of 7, boys could catch fish in nets. Girls could spin cotton into thread. Girls also went to school. The nobles and common people had separate schools. Girls and boys went to different schools too. Girls studied subjects such as music and dance. Boys also learned music and dance, but most of their lessons were about war. This page that I'm about to show you is from a book created in about 1500. The top 4 images show how bad children were punished. The bottom 4 images show children helping with important work such as harvesting crops, rolling tortillas, catching fish, and weaving. The idea of the cartoon speech bubble may have come from the Aztecs. Their drawings of people included small blue glyphs. These symbols show that someone is speaking. You can see them illustrated here. War was a big part of Aztec life. The Aztecs had no permanent army. Instead, every man had to fight when city leaders needed him. The Aztecs fought with spears and swords. They made these weapons from sharpened stones attached to pieces of wood. Warriors wore thick cotton padding for armor. Warriors tried to capture many enemy soldiers in battle. A warrior became more important by capturing many enemy soldiers. Some captives became slaves. The Aztecs killed other captives to please their gods. In battle, Aztecs used shields to protect themselves. This shield is decorated with feathers and sheets of gold. While you're looking at that, I'll tell you I'm right near my water feature and there are a lot of frogs. I'm wondering if you're hearing how loud they are. Great warriors dressed as eagles, jaguars, or other animals when they went off to fight. Chapter 2, Religion. Religion was important for all Aztecs. The Aztecs believed in about 200 gods. They built temples to worship these gods. The biggest temple was the Great Temple. This temple stood in the middle of Tenochtitlan. It was shaped like a pyramid. It has 2 parts at the top. One side was for, oh, now I thought that other word was hard, Huitzilopochtli, the sun god. The other was for Tlaloc, the rain god. These steps are the remains of the Great Temple. I'm going to type up these challenging words for you, and I would love it if you would record yourself trying to read the words back to me, and you can even tell me how you think they should be pronounced, because I am struggling. The Great Temple was about 200 feet or 60 meters tall. Wow, here's a drawing of it. The Aztecs celebrated 18 festivals each year. Different festivals were for different gods. A festival in early summer was called the Little Feast of the Lords. During this time, the Aztecs decorated the city with flowers. Salt makers danced and sang. The nobles held feasts and invited the commoners. Sacrifices also took place at festivals. Oh no, hold on, pause. Let's see if I can get it back up. My tower of stools and things trying to hold this up properly. Okay, got it. So this is a statue of Tenochtitlan, the god of flowers and dancing. Okay, here's the name that I couldn't say right here. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Maybe Sean Goff can help us. Maybe it's related to Spanish. I'm not sure. Maybe he can do some research for us. The Little Feast of the Lords celebrated 2 gods. One was the god of flowers and dancing. The other was the goddess of salt. To please their gods, the Aztecs sacrificed many people. Priests were in charge of the sacrifices. Most of the people killed were captured warriors or slaves. But sometimes the Aztecs killed children. People thought killing children for Tlaloc would bring rain. Oh dear, I'm so glad they don't do that anymore. One god, Quetzalcoatl, was different. He had the body of a snake and the wings of a bird. He did not want human sacrifices. Instead, the Aztecs offered him birds, snakes, and butterflies. Well, that feels better. The Aztecs believed that they had to make sacrifices. They thought the sun needed blood. Without blood, the sun might stop shining. The world might end. Aztec priests used knives such as this one to make sacrifices. This knife blade is a type of a stone. So they used stone to make a knife there. Priests rubbed ashes on their skin. Most priests were nobles. So this is before people really understood how the earth and the universe worked, right? So they had different beliefs. That's where religion really comes from, is figuring out how the world works. Now we know the sun will shine. We don't have to give it any blood. Chapter 3, Inside the City. Tenochtitlan was the largest city in ancient Mexico. It had wide streets. The neighborhoods were clean and organized. Every part of Tenochtitlan was carefully planned. A huge market stood at one end of the city. As many as 60,000 people may have traded there each day. Traders brought goods from far away. People bought and sold food, pottery, cloth, jewelry, slaves, and more. The Aztecs used cacao beans as money. They also used the beans to make chocolate. One bean could buy one large tomato. A small rabbit cost 30 beans. Here's a picture of the cacao beans. Look a lot like coffee beans. So you could bring one of those in exchange for a tomato, or 30 for a small rabbit. Common people in Tenochtitlan had lived in small houses. The walls were made of mud brick. Leaves covered the roofs. Families did not own much. They had a stone to grind corn. They used griddles for cooking tortillas and pots of beans and other foods. People ate from clay plates and bowls. Many people also had clay figures of gods in temples. People used the figures to worship at home. Common people could not build a house with 2 levels. A person who disobeyed this law could be killed. Geez, sounds like there are rough times there. I'm afraid my headlamp is getting less bright, but I'm not sure. The emperor was called the Tlatoani. He lived in a large palace with his family and hundreds of slaves. The palace had many rooms, courtyards, and gardens. It even had a zoo. The emperor and the nobles lived near the temples. They wanted common people to see that they were close to the gods. The word for emperor, Tlatoani, means he who speaks. Chapter 4, Ideas and Inventions. The Aztecs thought of many new ideas. They had scientists, scholars, poets, and artists. They studied the movements of the sun and the moon. They built a civilization unlike any that came before or after. Aztec writings tell us a lot about their culture. The Aztecs wrote with pictographs. These pictures and symbols stand for words. The Aztecs created printed works called codices. They tell us about events, government records, laws, and much more. Aztec books could be unfolded. This book is about 13 feet long when the pages are all spread out. The Aztecs made paper from the bark of fig trees. First, they pulled off large sheets of bark. Then they soaked them in water, dried them, boiled them, and used stones to pound them into finished flat sheets. It's a really big fig tree. My goodness, I've not seen one that big before. I would imagine if you couldn't harvest all the fruit, it would be a big mess, but maybe at that time there were more birds and things eating that fruit. I'm gonna throw another piece of wood on the fire. The Aztecs used 2 calendars. The first kept track of religious festivals. It included just 260 days. The second calendar was 365 days. It had 18 months of 20 days, plus 5 extra days. The 5 extra days came at the end of the year. The Aztecs thought these days were unlucky. Once every 52 years, the 2 calendars started on the same day. Aztecs believed the world could end on that day. They marked the day with the new fire ceremony. People put out their cooking fires. The city was dark. Then priests sacrificed a man and started a new fire at the top of the city's highest hill. Runners brought the new fire to all the temples and homes in the city. Interesting timing that I just warmed up the fire a bit or added another piece of wood. And there's an image. This stone carving is the Aztec calendar. An image of the sun is at the center. So here's the Aztec calendar. And here are the runners bringing the flames. That should help us see a little better with the extra wood on the fire. Aztec inventions helped many people. Healers used herbs to cure sickness. The Aztecs also built aqueducts to bring fresh water into the city. Aqueducts are structures that carry water long distances. The Aztecs were great farmers. Their chinampa farms helped feed the city. These floating farms were on islands in Lake Texcoco. Farmers piled up mud from the bottom of the lake to form the islands. With rich soil and plenty of water, the crops grew quickly. Farmers traveled between the fields in small boats. Since they used mud from the bottom of the lake, that's where a lot of the sediment would come down from plants rotting or animals, small animals in the water dying, like if you've ever done the ecosystem lesson, ocean ecosystem, for example. All of those things would then provide nutrients. So then when they used that mud to grow plants, I'm sure that there were a lot of nutrients there for the plant. Chapter 5, Ruling the Empire. Aztec emperors often led their people into wars. They fought with other leaders so they could control more land and more people. They also fought to take captives. Itzcoatl ruled from 1427 to 1440. He formed a partnership with two nearby cities, Texcoco and Tlacopan. This triple alliance created the Aztec Empire. Itzcoatl and his alliance fought wars with many nearby peoples to make the empire larger. Aztec warriors did not usually kill their enemies when they fought. Instead, they tried to take many captives. Itzcoatl was the uncle of Montezuma I. The name Montezuma can also be spelled Moctezuma. Montezuma I ruled from 1440 to 1469. He continued fighting wars and increasing the size of the empire. He also built gardens and helped plan an aqueduct for the city. Montezuma was the most famous Aztec ruler. Montezuma II was the most famous Aztec ruler. He was the great-grandson of Montezuma I. He became emperor in 1502. He was like a god to his people. This is him illustrated here. Montezuma II. Nobles carried Montezuma II through the city on a special chair with handles. In 1520, Hernan Cortez and a group of Spanish explorers came to Tenochtitlan. They brought new diseases to the area. They also had horses, guns, metal armor, and better swords than the Aztecs. They took Montezuma II prisoner. The Aztecs tried to fight off the explorers, but they did not succeed. Montezuma II died in 1520. Tenochtitlan fell in August 1521. Did I say 1520? I hope so. So Montezuma died in 1520. Tenochtitlan fell in August 1521. The city was ruined. The Aztec Empire came to an end. Here's Hernan Cortez from Spain. Before the Aztecs fought the Spanish, many Aztec warriors were weakened or killed by smallpox. Spanish explorers brought this disease to the Americas. Chapter 6, Echoes of the Aztecs. Much of the Aztecs' past is a mystery. The Spanish destroyed and burned buildings, books, and other symbols of Aztec culture. The people mixed with the Spanish. The Spanish brought Christian beliefs to the region. Aztec culture slowly faded. So that answers my question when I said, could Sean help us with these words? Are they Spanish? I guess they were not Spanish words because the Spanish came after the Aztecs. Some Aztecs saw that their way of life was ending. One man wrote a poem as he watched Tenochtitlan fall. Part of the poem reads, "Our city is lost and dead. The shields of our warriors were its defense, but they could not save it." People related to the Aztecs are called the Nahua. The name comes from the Aztec language, Nahuatl. Mexico has changed a lot since Aztec times. People drained the water from Lake Texcoco. Mexico City fills the valley where Tenochtitlan once stood. The modern city is built upon the ruins of the ancient city. Many Aztec objects still rest beneath its streets. Traces of the Aztec people also remain. Almost all Mexicans have some Aztec heritage. The Aztec language, Nahuatl, has blended with Spanish. Some Aztec words have even worked their way into English. Tomato, chili, and tamale are just a few such words. Who knew? Scientists who study ancient cultures dig to find Aztec ruins. The ruins help us imagine the lives of the Aztecs long ago. They also remind us of a fascinating culture that existed long before Europeans came to the Americas. These scientists are uncovering Aztec ruins that are buried under Mexico City. Modern Mexico City has a population of more than 8 million people. And they have an illustration of an Aztec temple in light blue in an area that's now Mexico City. You can imagine the two different types of architecture happening in the same spot. Or maybe in the same city, maybe not the exact same spot, I don't know. All right, and in the back there's a timeline. Oh, a pronunciation guide. Are you ready for this? Let's do that. Aqueducts, I know. Chinampa, I don't remember what Chinampa was. Codices, I said correctly. Now, Huitzilopochtli. Oh, I should type these up for you. Itzcoatl, okay. Mexica, Montezuma, got that right. Nahuatl, that's the language that the Aztecs spoke. Quetzalcoatl, I got that pretty close. Here we go, ready for the name of the city. tay-NOTCH-teet-LAHN. tay-NOTCH-teet-LAHN. Oh my goodness. tay-NOTCH-teet-LAHN. And then Texcoco, we mostly got. Tlachtli, Tlaloc, Tlatoani, tortillas. Oh, come on. We all know how to say tortillas, I hope. And then the last one was the one that began with the X. Xochipilli. Okay, so I'm going to type these up for you so you can read them and see how to pronounce things. And there's also a glossary. There's such great information here. So I can include that information. I'll type up the timeline for you and the glossary and the pronunciation guide, or take pictures of it so you can see it. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Aztecs with me next to my fire outside. It's been great sharing it with you. And we'll talk more about what we just read about. Have a good day.